very good at, following the structure that I was prescribed to. Like maybe that might look like being tired and really having some aches and pains, but pushing through that and getting up and doing the thing anyway. And again, like going back to what you said, that being applauded, that being celebrated because you're someone who shows up, you're someone who does the work and you work hard and therefore you'll get the results. But if you're not resting and listening and also in tune with what's happening inside yourself, you end up on the other side of that, which might, for some people, if that's their career, look like burnout, might look like injury if they're an athlete. I felt like I could dance completely freely. I wasn't worried about what anyone was thinking. I was so present to the moment, connected to the music, connected to my body. The majority of the planet is still operating, especially in the Western world, is still operating in a predominantly masculine. Like that's what's valued, that's what's prioritized, and a lot of it is the mind, the mental realm, right? This like up here. And so for most people, there is a journey to come down into the body, the feeling, the sensing, the internal space. For me, that was just the continual process of showing up and witnessing that and being okay with being uncomfortable and letting that discomfort be part of the dance or be part of the experience that I was in. And over time, being able to see that, I'm not thinking as much, like I'm not trying to move in a certain way.
I really rejected my feminine. Like I didn't like puberty. I hated puberty. Like I did not want the boobs or the hair or the curvaceousness, that's how much I was leaning more into the masculine way, because I didn't see the feminine way as being something that was being celebrated. And I seen, it was the work, as I said, I got acknowledged for being such a great worker on the farm and, so my sense of self-worth and value and safety and everything was kind of more that, to be the doer and responsible and to shove down all the emotions.
Even talking about it, how do we dilute shame? I feel like to say, I'm on day 2 of my bleed, and we're in a safe space here and I feel safe with you to share that, but this is also a public podcast.
And I know how much courage it takes, because I used to feel like the pressure cooker, that, that everything was so tucked away, that it felt like it really did get to a stage where it felt like a pressure cooker. And I've had people on my retreats and I've told this story and they're like, do you feel like a pressure cooker, and that you're afraid that if the lid lifts that you're going to explode and take out the world? She's gone from tears like to bursting out laughing, and I was like, I was back looking and I was like, I don't have that freedom. I knew I was, and that was the first time I realized I'm locked inside.
Or that what's been shut down in the feminine, when we think about emotions and intuition and sexuality and sensuality and freedom of movement, and then we correlate that with all the different expressions of the feminine that have been denied and shut down and suppressed.
Hello and welcome to the Divine Love podcast with Mary Jo Halligan, your host. Today I have another wonderful guest that I'm really excited to get into some juicy conversation with today around reclaiming your freedom of expression. I'd like to invite on Sarah Menlove.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's so great to be here with you.
Yes.
I'm already feeling all the amazing conversations, like just from our opening. So
yay. So I'll read a little bit of the bio to give a little bit of background. So Sarah, as an embodiment guide and sacred space holder, supports heart-led women to come home to the wisdom and joy of their bodies and own the fullness of their expression, so they can take up space and share their unique gifts in the world. Sarah currently facilitates this via cacao, breathwork, and somatic dance events in the Southland of New Zealand and as online offerings. Beautiful. So welcome again, Sarah. Beautiful bio, and really goes hand in hand with, as I explained to you just before we hopped on, as I was writing in the title of this podcast to send you the link, was the freedom of expression. That's what really the energy around freedom of expression and helping others reclaim their freedom of expression. So, where do we start with this juicy conversation? So, perhaps maybe tell a little bit more about your background and what led you into this focus, if you like, and this passion that you are, really that your bio reflects for yourself and for others.
Mm. Yeah, as we were beginning to open this conversation at the start, it was cool because we were starting to feel into these themes, and what what was coming to me was the importance of our own journey and the sort of things that we've recognized we've had to overcome, or we're maybe still overcoming, or we've gone on that journey with, that then leads to be what we end up facilitating or holding space for others in the world. And so I love that we're starting with this question. And yeah, if someone had said to me I would be doing this sort of work even 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I would have laughed at that. And maybe the same's true for you and the work that you're doing wherever you go back to on that timeline. So similar to you, I think I grew up in a religious sort of upbringing, farm childhood. I shared a post, I don't know, a week or so ago about sort of being one of the boys, like being very much out on the farm and playing competitive sports, and that was a theme that led through most of my early life, like sports, and got heavily into triathlon. My early 20s got heavily into personal training and very much like focused on the aesthetic and how I wanted my body to look, and shedding weight and getting skin folds done and following like plans around food, and like this very rigid structure that underneath it came from a wanting to appear a certain way to others, right? Like wanting to fit in this mold that I'd learned. We all have different ones of those, lots of different ones of those, but that was one of them for me, of like being fit, being an athlete, kind of these identities that I'd picked up along the way, and then the physical representation of that, lack of a better word, and how that showed up in my relationship with my body, my relationship with food, and the disconnect from the relationship with my authentic self, with my true nature or my divine nature, and all the other aspects of me. So that's kind of where it started for me, was the unraveling of a lot of that stuff, and then going on
So,
that
so is that
journey.
what led you into the health coaching then? Tell me, so you get the sports background, the athletic, the fitness, one that more physical, I guess, very physical focused, right?
Yeah,
So I guess a lot of your sense of self-worth, as you said, identity was coming from that physical, and I mean that's how it's been, and it for many it continues to be, that the physical, our physical appearance or our physical athleticism or whatever it is, that gets the round of applause, that gets that
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
celebration and acknowledgement. And the truth is every child wants that.
Mm, mm,
There's a sense of that acknowledgement. So whether it's sports or so for somebody else it could be academia, or it could be something completely different. But for you is obviously the physical, for whatever reason that was, probably on the farm as well. I know in my own upbringing, I learned that my sense of value and self-worth was from what I did. So it was like being a good worker.
mm,
That's where I got
yeah.
my sense of value and being acknowledged. So
Mm,
that's really something I've really had to work with, and even continue to realize that my true value is in who I be rather than what I do.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah. I can really resonate with that too. Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah. So just tell me a little bit more. So that just got you into the health coaching, and then tell me a little bit more the next phase.
Yeah, what really led me to the health coaching, which I think is important to speak to, is something that I often share on these sorts of conversations, is the injury where I ended up with a stress fracture. And you kind of look back to some of those moments and think, wow, if that had never happened, I wonder what the trajectory of the life path would have been, and those forks in the road where I made that choice that I've got this injury and I'm going to put a pause on this training in this way, and on this for a moment. And I thought it was going to be 6 months or a few months, or definitely not kind of the dissolving of the identity and all the things that went with that. But that was the catalyst. Like
Well,
I'd
how
been
many
missing
years ago? How many years ago was that, Sarah? Just to give a bit of a
It
timeline.
was around 2017,
Okay.
maybe something like that. Yeah. Yeah, maybe 2016, 2017, around that time.
So you had this
Both of that.
stress fracture, just thinking you were going to be out of the game for a few months and that you were going to get back into being who you were pre the stress fracture. But
Yeah,
I'm guessing that's not what happened.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So what
Yeah.
happened?
So I was working in a gym at the time and training some clients. And it's so funny how these things come in. I heard that someone was doing health coaching and I was curious and I was like, what's a health coach? I've never heard of that. And it was before in New Zealand, coaching was really not that well known at that time. It was starting, and in America, definitely. But yeah, so I started to do some research and I was like, oh, that sounds cool. And I've done a PE degree and I'm working in personal training and I've got these clients and I can see that there's some areas that I'd love to support them more in. And do I go and study nutrition like at university, or do I do something like health coaching? So I enrolled in like a health and life coaching program with no idea. Like I've done pretty much zero personal development and like not gone down any rabbit holes really of my own personal awareness journey either, of looking at different aspects of myself. So that's where it all began, was like, okay, I'm going to do this for my clients, like, oh, I'm going to do it because I want to learn this for someone else. And then ultimately what that brought up was the ability to dive into a lot more of that work for myself. Started to work with my own coach and do a lot of healing around my relationship with my body as I was going through that healing journey, stepping away from sport, opening up to what I really wanted to be doing, not really knowing. And yeah, like we were talking about at the start before we jumped on here, starting to just follow those breadcrumbs, for lack of a better word, those things that were coming into me that I had curiosity around, and then started to explore them and let them take me on a journey into what was next. And so that's how it sort of begun with the coaching and my own personal awareness journey and self-discovery. Yeah.
Beautiful. So 3 years ago was where I met you. It was at the Embodied Sarsha Hope's Embodied Ecstatic Dance training, a 10-day training. I was in New Plymouth. And one of the things that I guess resonated with you is, like this how do I explain it? Yeah, just feeling that how to soften that masculine energy, your own
Mm,
exploration. And I definitely
mm,
can relate to that. Um, to have the courage to be more vulnerable and to really open up into that self-expression. So do you want to talk a little bit more about what that journey has been like for you and how you discovered conscious dance and
mm.
that journey of rather than the sports, which I guess it's a discipline and I don't know exactly what sports it was, but it's a bit different. Yeah, you're getting into that feminine energy and how that gets
Yeah,
expressed in the body. So yeah, talk a little bit more about that and the challenges with it as well.
yeah, yeah. I mean, coming from a sporting and personal training background, it is very linear, right? And it's also very prescriptive. Yeah, so I was competing in triathlon at the time, swimming prior to that, and other team sports earlier on, but yeah, swimming, triathlon. And when I think back to sort of that time when I was stepping away from that, part of the challenge was I'd had a training plan for my pretty much my whole life since I was like 12 years old. So it was very prescriptive, and there's a time and a place for that. And it taught me some amazing things, and I have some great qualities because of that. But also, it was here's what you do, and here's what time you show up. And when you get there, you're going to follow these, set of whatever we're doing as a group for that day, for that training. And so it really takes you away. And you can see when I was injured and in the lead up to that injury, I wasn't, while I was so in my body in the sense of moving, I wasn't connected to my body. I wasn't feeling, listening, and relating to what my body was telling me. I was very good at, um, following the structure that I was prescribed to. Like maybe that might look like being tired and really having some aches and pains, but pushing through that and getting up and doing the thing anyway. And again, like going back to what you said, that being applauded, that being celebrated because you're someone who shows up, you're someone who does the work and you work hard and therefore you'll get the results. But if you're not resting and listening and also in tune with what's happening inside yourself, you end up on the other side of that, which might, for some people, if that's their career, look like burnout, might look like injury if they're an athlete. So that's where that all started. And then when you asked about when did you sort of start to find dance, someone asked a really cool question that I thought I'd dive into, go a little bit out there with, which was there an aha moment or a time when you consciously chose to get up and dance, or what was that first sort of experience like for you? And I was reflecting on that, and I think I commented saying, oh, I might share a story I haven't shared before. So if it's okay with you, I'll
Please go
share
ahead.
something a little bit more out there. Yeah, so after that initial healing journey, and I was working, like I had coaching clients and I was working online. This must have been about 2018, 2019, maybe early 2019. I traveled to Central America and I ended up being away for 9 months. And I was just full, moving away from that structure and that rigidity and that having to show up to a certain, task and do it like this, to explore what, and this wasn't a conscious thought, but now I look back and I can see what would it look like to just let all of that go, be in the moment and follow my intuition or trust where I was going to end up. And so it was quite a wild journey. I didn't have much planned. I was away for 9 months altogether, and I ended up doing lots of amazing things and meeting incredible people and following again where I was called to go, or who I met and what they were telling me and what I was interested in. And one of those things when I was away was Envision Music Festival, which I don't know, some may know, some may not. It's in Costa Rica, quite a big conscious and music. I'd say it's more on the music scene, but there's yoga and there's workshops and there was a red tent women's area and things like that that I'd never really explored before. This was very new to me. And I was by myself. I was in Costa Rica, staying at a hostel. And yes, I took myself to this festival and I was there. And one night I had like a little bit of mushroom chocolate. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go and dance. And I ended up in this little grove, this little DJ booth. You can imagine it in the jungle, sand under your feet, there's like trees and lights and DJ and just, yeah, in this little portal. And in that experience, and you talked about as well, like the different substances or things that kind of allow you to express a certain part of yourself that you then get to work with outside of that. So I had an amazing experience. I felt like I could dance completely freely. I wasn't worried about what anyone was thinking. I was so present to the moment, connected to the music, connected to my body. And that when I was tuning into that question, I was like, that's the moment that I really felt something that I then got to go away and nurture or be with in other environments outside of that space. But that was felt like a bit of a catalyst, something completely new to me.
Yeah. So do you feel like because it kind of gave you that experience that you wanted more of it?
Yeah. And it or opened up or took me into a part of myself that I didn't know was there or I'd disconnected from as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And showed me like there was the energetics as well of like, wow, I really feel in this moment, in this movement, how much we are connected with the energy of everything in this experience as well. So there was different layers to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, which,
Well,
you know, you've, yeah.
yeah. I just feel like saying this now is it's interesting even on the camera, like the light coming in on your face and there's like a shade on the other side, like a really representing that yin and yang, or that yin,
Mm,
which is the inner, and what you're speaking about, the energetic, or the called the feminine, or the inner, or the dark, but that subtle energy body. Whereas the
mm,
yang, the light external, is more that physicality, knock on wood, reality,
mm,
matter. So it's
mm,
like a lot of your life was more in the physical. You're focused on
mm.
the physical, knock on wood. Again, we could call it the left brain, the scientific, you know what I mean? And poo-poo anything else.
Yeah, totally.
Then you open, this tapped you back in to that more yin energy, or that inner sense of your subtle energy body, and that
Mm,
connectivity, which happens whether it's meditation or yoga or dance. That is the inner work, is coming
mm,
back in and reconnecting with that inner dimension, if you like, or subtle energy body, which isn't so gross, it isn't so tangible, and yet as you drop into it, and this is what the substances can help with, is so that we can drop out of the left brain and actually come into the body, the heart, and the right brain, and have access to it. um so yeah, tell us a little bit more about how yeah, what your journey has been like to keep blossoming in that, I guess, and to not only blossom in it, but to integrate as well, because I think that's a big
mm,
topic, especially with so many people doing a lot of plant medicine,
mm,
and I do quantum healing hypnosis, which is a bit like plant medicine but different, as in it opens up into these different realms, if you like, or different timelines and memories, and and then and but then whatever way you do it, it is, how do you embody it, like how do you integrate it as well, so that it is reflective in your life, in a way that is that it works for you, basically. That's harmonious,
mm.
and each one's probably going to be a little bit different in that. But anything that you have to share, yeah, I guess to add, maybe, I guess I'm thinking of anybody listening to this conversation who is in going to use in that dance with themselves, and yeah, I mean, again, it can be tricky because it depends where somebody is at. So, like,
Yeah.
for example, the way I see it is like, if somebody's very in the creative, energetic, then it can be about the physical, to really ground in and get into those lower chakras. Whereas if somebody's very in the physical, it's like yourself, you needed like to have that accident. And now I think of my hubby who's come off his bike, and endurance athlete, and he's gone through his own journey of
Mm,
deeper diving, and even just being more still to be more receptive, which is another quality of the
mm,
feminine energy, um to ground in. Yeah, it's interesting. It's like it's so, I mean, we're just such fascinating beings, but it's like there's a slowing down to expand out, to have
mm,
more of a connectivity, so that we don't get so narrow focused, because that's the tendency of the masculine, isn't it? It's very
mm,
good at the details. It's very good, as you said, the plan, the strategy, okay, but it can get very rigid if we continue on that path without having access to that broader spectrum of awareness, or just realization that we are interconnected beings with our environment, with our bodies, and with each other, ultimately with the planet.
mm,
So
mm,
any other insights in your journey, what that's been like to navigate, to integrate, to explore? Um, because I think the tricky thing is, and is when somebody's in that and maybe feeling alone in it, or feeling
mm,
crazy, or because it's huge. I mean, it's a huge journey, and it's amazing that you went off and traveled. But to go from, it's a huge confronting journey, to go from that sports personality, your identity, and then to, open up into all that. And I'm sure there's some messy moments along the way.
Oh my gosh, so many. And that's like the beauty of it as well, right? How do we just love all of our mess? And I think when you were asking that, what was coming to me was the majority of the planet. is still operating, especially in the Western world, is still operating in a predominantly masculine. Like that's what's valued, that's what's prioritized, and a lot of it is the mind, the mental realm, right? This like up here. And so for most people, there is a journey to come down into the body, the feeling, the sensing, the internal space that however you arrive there, it requires a lot of deconditioning around that value piece. But the stories that come up, the things that I still get to catch myself on, like, oh, I should be being more productive and that looks like this, or showing up like this, and just witnessing how that takes us away from what our bodies and our soul that is inhabiting our body, is expressing to us when we've got those layers of conditioning living up here that are kind of dictating how we're moving through the world or the choices that we're making in our lives. And I think that's the real integration. So for me, that's great. I'm traveling. I don't know anyone. I can find this sense of freedom. I can be in a jungle in Costa Rica and have an amazing experience. And that on its own is great. But what I've come to, even with my work, like you can have a cacao journey, or like you maybe go into a quantum hypnosis experience. You could be taken into a portal and see something about something and have all this insight come in. But then what, like I do believe that shifts something on an energetic level in itself. And also, and this might be the integration of that practical part of me. I'm like, how does that impact this physical reality? And what do you then get to do with that information that supports you in your life now? So for me, coming back from travel, from those experiences, yeah, it was rough at times. And it was like all the who am I's and what am I going to do? And where are my people? Those shifts and connections, those shifts in the things that you used to do for fun, or, I used to drink a lot when I was prior to, sort of sports and things like that when I was at uni, and that was my socializing. And that's when I would dance under the influence of alcohol, right? But I guess I found things when I was traveling that I wanted to keep exploring. And so when I returned to New Zealand, and trusting again the things that were presenting themselves to me, I ended up going to different festivals like New Zealand Spirit, Resolution, finding these conscious dance floors in those spaces, and then ecstatic dance, I guess it was called, where I was living in Mount Maunganui at the time, and communities of people, and yeah, continuing to go to these sometimes uncomfortable environments, uncomfortable for that previous version of me that was like, what are you doing? This is not who you are.
Give me
This
the
is
script.
weird, or, this is weird. What do they think? What are they going to think of you? Like, I think someone else asked this on one of the questions, like, how do you move beyond that? And for me, that was just the continual process of showing up and witnessing that, and being okay with being uncomfortable and letting that discomfort be part of the dance or be part of the experience that I was in. Uh, and over time, being able to see that, oh, I'm not thinking as much, like I'm not trying to move in a certain way, or I'm not following the same patterns of movement. And that's where facilitation or being in a guided space, I think, can be really helpful, and was really helpful for me. And like when I met you on the training, probably went into some of those deeper layers. Yeah, but that's how I integrated it. I came back and I continued to do those things, and I continued to explore what was there for me. And then how that noticing how that felt, noticing what I needed to keep doing in my own life to keep bringing that in more and more.
Yeah, beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you. So I will read out these questions that you're
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
laying to. So in the Divine Love Ambassador Facebook group, So Melissa, I'll ask her specifically how she wrote it. So her question was, oh yeah, you answered that, I think, about where you chose to get up and dance at the event. So I think you've covered that one. Yeah, and she's relating to growing up as one of the boys, so it doesn't seem so natural for her to allow that type of feminine expression to flow freely. So, and then Deb was, yeah, about learning about how the body is linked to unlocking all these things. And her question is around how to break down the conditioning or thinking that impedes our full expression based on societal norms with regards to expression. For example, how some movements are sexualized. How does one get past that conditioning or feeling silly or inappropriate when moving their bodies more freely? In the West, most of us just haven't been raised to express ourselves in these ways.
Mm. Mm. Is there anything you would like to
Well,
add on?
anything you want to share. Maybe you could go into even just sharing about what conscious dance is, because for myself, really a lot of it is that we've just come into a lot of judgment around our bodies, and whether we've picked it up in our environments growing up, our culture. I talked a little bit in the group about in Ireland growing up, a lot of shame around the body, around a lot of
Mm.
shame around sexuality,
Mm.
and around this part of our bodies. Actually, I'll share a little story. It's just coming to me. Is it wasn't until I did Reiki and more energetic healing modalities that I really started to tune into energy, and I was doing these energy scans in my body, and one day it dawned on me that, and I used to have a lot of, I really rejected my feminine. Like I didn't like puberty. I hated puberty. Like I did not want the boobs or the hair or the curvaceousness. That's how much I was leaning more into the masculine way, because I didn't see the feminine way as being something that was being celebrated. And
Mm.
I seen, it was the work, as I said, I got acknowledged for being such a great worker on the farm, and very, so my sense of self-worth and value and safety and everything was kind of more that, to be the doer and responsible and to shove down all the emotions. And so yeah, and so I really pushed away my own feminine energy, and to me now on reflection, that ended up that I had a lot of menstrual issues, and I really do see that connection,
Mm.
because my own healing in that way has been embracing more of my feminine energy, which has totally transformed my energy with my body. But yeah, when it really dawned on me just how uh, pervasive, we'll say, it was in my psyche, in my subconscious, was when I was doing an energy scan one day, and I literally skipped over from below my belly button to just below my hips. Like, as
Mm.
in, I could scan the rest of my body, but I jumped over that. Like I had that's how little connection I had energetically with that part of my body. And that was just, I realized, whoa, that's how much I've rejected a
Mm.
woman, like my
Mm.
womanly parts, It's
Mm.
like, and so that was a big aha moment, and it was like, right, I'm ready to really reconnect, really, with this part of me, and re-own it and reclaim it. So, again, talking about this reclamation of our freedom of expression, and then moving through the body, and then the judgment is a lot of stuff that we picked up of what does it mean or what does it not mean, or
Mm.
I remember even myself, it's like, and even sometimes being out in clubs, and as well, alcohol and drugs. As I said, I wrote a blog years ago. Thank God for alcohol and drugs, because it got me out of all my super self-conscious shame and confusions and all the rest of it, and just to go have fun and dance, and
Yeah.
you discover dance. That's where I discovered dance, really was in a club, and just having the most fun. And then eventually, on unconscious dance floors, but to reclaim that freedom without the meanings that the mind has given to
Mm.
these different expressions. So maybe if you talk to that a little bit, going back to Deb's question, and the feeling of silliness, and all of that, really, it just is part of the journey, isn't it? To unpack it, and to, as you said earlier, is that we learn to be more gentle and kind, and love those parts of us that at some stage picked up that it was shameful or silly or
Mm.
stupid or weak,
Mm.
or whatever the storyline is.
Yeah, I just want to say I can relate to so much of what you've shared around your menstrual cycle. You know, I'm currently on day 2 of my bleed right now. I was like, oh, I'm gonna speak from the womb today.
Yeah. So one of
Um,
the things that I started learning to do many years ago for myself to really help shift the thinking around, because I'm fascinated about this topic alone, because I
yeah.
think it's so fascinating how our menstrual cycle, oh my golly, that's just a whole huge, that's a whole other topic, but it is and it isn't. Because
Mm,
it's so connected into being in our rhythm, being in our
mm,
natural rhythm and cycles with our bodies, with the cycles of the earth, with our essence, you know, who we truly are, and then what it's like to be disconnected from that. And I was certainly disconnected from that. Um, what did I want to say there? Oh yeah, just about, yeah, your second day in your bleed. So yeah, one of the things I started to shift, because I had such a rejection of my feminine, which meant my menstrual cycle as well. I noticed that when it would come up that time of the month again, I started to notice there was this voice of going, oh no, not again.
mm,
And so
mm,
to start to turn that around in a more conscious way, I started going, "Oh, I'm celebrating my femininity.
mm.
It's the feminine celebration time." And I even got my hubby involved. It's like, "What am I doing? I'm celebrating my femininity today." Even though sometimes I was like, "Ugh."
Yeah.
It's not feeling quite a celebration, but yes, I'm choosing a new story, and it's been really powerful, shifting the story around it. So, anything else you want to share around any of that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, a whole nother conversation, but yeah, massive um for me, my journey with my cycle as well. It's ongoing, and it does feel like it's part of this, yeah, this whole conversation, very much, very much. Even talking about it, you know, how do we dilute shame? I feel like to say, oh, I'm on day 2 of my bleed, you know, and we're in a safe space here, and I feel safe with you to share that. But this is also a public podcast, and it's like we start to have these conversations around topics that are taboo or that in Western culture or mainstream society are not publicly talked about, or maybe when we were younger in our teenage years we would hide that. We would not want to say to someone, oh, I've got my period right now, or I'm on day 2 of my bleed. But now when we speak to it, it's like, yeah, I'm owning that part of myself. I'm owning that expression in me. So just just to say that is something that we can do to help dilute shame as well. And then when it comes to how we, not sure the exact question, like move through the conditioning, is it something around that we get when we're dancing? Yeah. What I love
And the
about,
sexualization, like of certain
yeah,
moves, maybe feeling a bit
yeah,
sexual, and again, what we connect that to, I guess, or the and a lot of that impressions is come through the TV and movies,
yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, so many layers to it, but what I love about dance and conscious dance floors, or dancing on your own and noticing what's coming up for you, it's such a mirror. Like we get such a clear reflection of what the stories are, what the messaging is, what the beliefs that we've been carrying, that until we are in that experience, we might not have even known. And so my question would be, how can you use that as your own liberation and your own curious kind of I get excited now sometimes. I'm like, oh, there's something there that I haven't explored. And that when you can bring that into your dance or bring that into your experience, you know, you don't have to call it dance. You might just be moving in a certain way, moving a certain body part, moving your hips in a different way, noticing, oh, there's a story coming up, or I'm feeling silly, or I'm telling myself that this doesn't look good enough, or whatever is there. Can you move with that? Can you give that a movement? Can you let that part of you also take up space? Because what we tend to do, right, is notice these things, or notice these parts of ourselves, or notice these younger versions of us that were once shamed for a certain expression, and then we shut them down. We go, oh, I shouldn't be feeling silly for that, or, and then we don't allow ourselves to
Inappropriate,
explore that.
unacceptable.
Yeah, and then we've got judgment on top of something that was already feeling you know, and this is about doing it in a way that you're in a safe environment, whether that's you've created that safety in yourself, or you've got a safe group or a safe facilitator, or because those things that can arise when we go into the body are deep. And, you know, there's other experiences that we've had that might be there as well, not just the stories or the things that we've been told, but the experiences that we've had that were very real that we then have embedded in particular areas of the body. So doing that with a real gentleness and a real, you know, I guess just awareness for what's there and what's coming up, and how can you hold yourself lovingly through that, and move it, let it move, let it. I always like to think, oh, if I'm feeling silly, can I just let that part of me that feels silly move or make a sound, or and then continue on.
A lot of what you're sharing is really what conscious dance is about. So for somebody
Mm,
who's never been to a conscious dance, and that can, I mean, there's lots of different conscious dance. As I mentioned in the group as well, Five Rhythms was the first conscious dance I got to explore, and I'm so, so grateful. And then like a static dance and open floor and but can you explain a bit more what conscious dance is for you? Because what we are speaking about is becoming more conscious. So
mm,
instead of rejecting, which is the old habit or what we learn to do and judge these different aspects of us, now through more consciousness, we're learning a different way to be with it. As
mm,
you said in your beautiful posting, um, was about and was I've said about the menstrual cycle. It's like shifting the story from judgment to curiosity,
mm,
and you know, from rejection to how can I move and include. I love that idea. Move and
mm.
include this
Nice, yeah.
this aspect of me that is
Mm.
that is feeling a bit awkward, and not only move and include, but yeah, get the curiosity. Go, how does that one want to move? Oh, okay. What does awkwardness look like in my body? Even what does shame look like in my body? And I love
Mm,
that that's what conscious dance gives the permission for, and to
mm,
be able to do that in a room full of others,
mm.
you know, and it's these permission slips and a safe space as well. So yeah, if you want to speak into that or anything else you'd like to add, that would help somebody that's never been to a conscious dance. They don't know really, they've never had the experience, or maybe they've seen it, but they're still just not sure. Because, you know, sometimes at a festival, you may not, you may not kind of, it depends. I mean, but you may not get the full depth of what's, you know, it's like anything in life. It's easy. It's just like your trip going to South America. It's easier to look back and go, ah, now I know what that was all about. But at the
Mm.
time, you were kind of you're in the mix of it. So yeah, anything else just to help somebody that yeah would understand more of what conscious dance really is and what's available.
Yeah, and like you've spoken to like a lot of different genres, and I'd never really danced at all before, right? We're talking like when I went overseas, when was that, 2019 or something, and yeah, and then coming back and diving into the training where we met. And so I guess that's where I sort of come from in my facilitation and somatic dance, through Sasha Hope. And but yeah, like you've said, Five Rhythms. I've been to Five Rhythms day or weekend workshops, which was amazing. And there's other forms. So if you're someone who's thinking about what you want to explore or looking at going to a conscious dance, yeah, you might get confused by all the names and all the terminologies and things, but I would just ask yourself, yeah, what you want to get out of it. Um, is there someone that you resonate with, or someone in your local area that's offering something? And like I said, when I started showing up to these spaces, I got to be with my own discomfort of that, and inner sort of judgment that was arising that I could move through, and just to be in that process of showing up, right, and choosing spaces that feel right for you, because there are lots of different varieties of dance, some facilitated, some unfacilitated, some more like what we've been speaking to, journeying into the body, into different layers of the body and the consciousness that's there and the emotions that are there. And so I don't really know what else to say other than yeah, see where you're guided to, and see what is available in the area that you're in, and give yourself that permission to explore and be curious. And if you can go into anything with an open mind and curiosity, I think you'll receive what's there for you. But yeah, anything that you would add to that? There's lots out there.
Yeah, I mean, it is an
Yeah,
exploration, and I think
yeah.
it's, you know, for me, it was the desire for liberation. It really
Mm,
was the desire to set myself free. And maybe I'll share another little story that may really kind of um, bring it home in a way. I was like 17. As I said, I'd repressed and suppressed. I'd just grown up, and that's what I learned, or I decided that I needed to do. I needed to be strong. I need to be responsible. You know, there's a whole other story, you know, as to why that was as well. So I'd really denied a lot of myself and emotions and so forth. They were kind of pushed aside, repressed, suppressed, denied. And it was when I was like 17, 18. I was outside a nightclub with a friend, a new friend that I'd met. She didn't go to the same secondary school that I was at in Ireland. And while we were outside with these group of guys, because I was so defended, because I was so wanting to be strong and not feel any, like, be strong to not be rejected in any
Mm,
way.
mm,
I wanted to look tough and look, nothing can, you know, anything just bounces off me, you know. It's like, and also I had a belief, truly, at that time. I had a belief that emotions were weak. Like, if somebody had
mm.
asked my 17-year-old what it is to be vulnerable, I'd be like, Stay away from it. You do not want to be vulnerable, like, because that is a weakness that was connected somewhere in my brain. I don't remember anybody telling me, but that's what I picked up, you know,
Yeah.
somewhere along the way. So because of that, I had pushed away vulnerability, and I had fortified myself against it energetically.
Yeah.
So one night we're outside this
Which
club.
was amazing at some point in time. I'm sure that was a very like
Yeah,
supportive thing for you to do.
Ex
And
and you're
yeah,
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So there's a place and time for everything, and it's all learning. And I mean, it's unpacking everything that I've unpacked that makes me understand what I understand on a depth
yeah,
that I
exactly.
understand it. So
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
beauty, and that's where I feel really, you know, a resonance with you as well, because I can see, you know, I can witness that in your beautiful journey, and authenticity. I mean, I just love authenticity now, which requires vulnerability, and it takes courage, you know. And I know how much courage it takes, because I used to feel like the pressure cooker, that, you know, that everything was so tucked away, that it felt like it really did get to a stage where it felt like a pressure cooker. And I've had people on my retreats, and I've told this story, and they're like, do you feel like a pressure cooker, and that you're afraid
Mm.
that if the lid lifts, that you're going to explode
Oh
and take
yeah, I
out the
can
world?
relate. Yeah.
And how do you know that? You can't know that unless you've been through all this stuff and had that experience. And but anyway, I'll go back to this night outside the club. So this new friend of mine, we've connected. We're having a lot of fun, and I guess I'm probably attracted that she seems a lot more freer and joyful. And anyways, we're outside the club, and all of a sudden, I don't even know what happened, but she is bawling her eyes out, like absolutely bawling her eyes out, which I at the time would never do. I mean, never in a million years. And all the guys were around her, you know, we're teeny boppers, you know, so that's the kind of, and I'm like, wow. But what was even more wow was that a few seconds later, she was bursting her arse laughing her head off. She'd gone from tears, like, to bursting out laughing. And I was back looking, and I was like, I don't have that freedom. I knew I was, and that was the first time I realized I'm locked inside. Like,
Mm,
I'm caged away. Like, I might not have used those words, but I knew I didn't have the freedom for whatever freedom she was expressing emotionally. I did not have access to it in that moment. And that's what planted the seed in me. I feel like it planted the seed, or the desire. I want that freedom. I want
mm,
that liberation. This is not, you know, I just knew I wasn't in that liberation. And to me, that kind of led from this desire to want to point in that direction, whatever would start to liberate my heart again and give me the
Mm.
freedom of expression. And it's only in these latter years I've gone back to that same person who's been kind of following me and going, wow, what I'm up to. I'm like, well, I've got this story to share with you. It was actually back at that night that I witnessed you doing that, that ignited this
Wow.
desire in me. So, this kind of those full circle moments.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So,
Mm.
so maybe what I'd like to touch on now is self love.
Mm.
Because again, I think it can be something, depending on where you are with that journey, that can seem maybe cringy, can seem la-di-da-di. Um, what has your journey been like that? And yeah, what would you have to share with somebody who maybe doesn't quite get the whole self-love thing and why it's important?
I wonder if this is, yeah, I'm really putting some dots together. I'm like joining the dots, but like, oh, this is probably connected to the like more doing, when you're in that sort of energy of like, got to do the things and appear a certain way, and yeah, sort of armoring that goes with that, that also there you're not fully allowing yourself to receive in that. And with that is receive your own love or the love and support of those around you as well. And self-love is still I feel like that's always the piece that comes back, is like, where are you not fully loving all the parts of yourself right now? Yeah. So that's been a huge part of the journey. Yes. Of course, it started with kind of that physical journey, body, noticing where I wasn't connected to my body, wasn't being loving towards my body, had a lot of judgment, had a lot of shame, had a lot of wish this were different, wish that were different, stories and all the things. So started in that area, and then I think coming into this place of like self-love is both an action, like how we're treating ourselves, how we're nourishing our bodies, how we're giving ourselves the space to rest when we need rest, or nurture ourselves when we want some, when we're needing a bit more tenderness, to even know that that's what we like, what we need, right? That's a whole journey in itself. It's to listen to those signals, like go back to what we were first talking about, to listen to those signals and to know that we're not always going to get that right. And if we then take the self-love journey and make it a journey of gotta perfect the self-love, then
Yeah.
we're gonna, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And even self-love can seem too far out, so
yeah,
even starting with just some self-kindness, or
yeah.
being a little bit more patient or gentle or kind, and that really is pointing the direction of the self-love. I had a friend, a healer friend, and I remember her saying to me, it's like, people don't even know what to do with the term self-love. So on her card or whatever, she was like, just being kind, just being kinder to yourself, you know,
Mm,
that self-love, that idea of self-love was just too much of a stretch for most people. It was like,
yeah.
what about just being a little bit kinder to
Well,
yourself?
you've got to think about how like the qualities of love as well, right? Like trust and respect and compassion and kindness, and the ways that it's always easier to think how you would show love to someone else, or how you might witness that in another, and then bring that in a way. Like, yeah, compassion is, I think, one of the most important ones there, to be self-compassionate, to know that you're doing okay, that what you're experiencing is okay, and that you can talk to yourself or be with yourself in a way that, yeah, that lets yourself know that, especially if you're someone who didn't receive that when you were younger for whatever reason, or in the way that maybe you would have liked to, that you're learning that as you go as well, and then you're giving that to yourself. And and, and if you've been more in that doing or productive or praised for those things, then that is a real learning of how you can give yourself that grace and that compassion and that gentleness in those moments when you're feeling tender, or when you've made a mistake because you're a human being, or you've raged at your loved one when you really wanted to be, you know, gentle with them, and you're just like, yeah, treating yourself with kindness as you navigate the messiness of growth and the human experience.
Yeah, and then the forgiving element as well,
Mm,
that is actually an aspect of self-love. Like
yeah.
forgiving is letting yourself off the hook when you did rage at your partner, or when you did whatever it was, have a meltdown, whatever it is. And again, the forgiveness is letting go of the judgment and letting yourself off the hook, or letting others off the hook of past expressions, really. Rather
Mm,
than being stuck on a good or a bad or a right or a wrong, which is all the judgment. And to free up, yeah, what does it really look like to free up our expression? So anything more about, yeah, reclaiming, as we began, as we kind of take it full circle back to the beginning,
yeah.
reclaiming your freedom of expression. Anything else you'd like to share with people around that? And also maybe touch into like the soul purpose, or yeah, and even this word somatic dancing, because that seems to be more a word that's been used. What does that actually even mean? And I think with a lot of understanding around trauma, um, yeah, these terminologies, it comes about so that we can have a relationship with what they represent. So if you want to talk a little
Mm.
bit more into that as well, and then yeah, and then we'll take it from there.
How long? Yeah. How long have we got? Yeah.
Along as a
Okay.
piece of,
I'll do my
along as a
best.
piece of string.
Okay. We'll start with I guess we can start with the somatic dance, and yeah, still very much a student of the work and continuing to dive deeper into that space. Um, but yeah, when you look at, so maybe ecstatic dance is quite widely known, and that while you might have a similar experience, and that to me that feels limiting, and it's like not only ecstatic, it's not only joyful. Yes, you might reach those states. And and I'm sure you have as well in other conscious dance spaces or the somatic dance space, is that when we go into soma, meaning body, we're going into the felt sensation of different layers in the body. And within that, we might access various different states of emotions, as well as different states or wisdoms that come through those different layers of the body, and what they have to gift us and what they have to teach us. And I love that part of the training that we've both done is in, how we can embody different physical body parts, for example, like bones or like skin or like cells or tissues, because each of those parts of our body holds a different vibration and a different consciousness and a different wisdom that it can bring us in our movement as well as our daily lives. And yeah, it's pretty wild, some of the experiences that you can have, right? Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of the somatic, the felt sensation, the felt layers of the body, and how they wish to express, and what they, yeah, how they want to move, and what they get to gift you through that. And then what was your other
Soul
part?
purpose. Soul chapter.
Soul purpose.
Soul purpose.
um, for me, like, yeah, for me, or for how I see that
Yeah,
showing up in
maybe,
others.
maybe if you want to talk it for yourself, and just maybe of what, like, and kind of a segue into what you're offering as
Yeah,
as that expression of your soul purpose in this moment. And of course, it's ever
yeah,
evolving, ever expanding.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if anyone here is into astrology, if you know much about astrology, Mary Jo, but
Uh,
my south node is in Virgo and my north node is in Pisces. So it's very interesting for those who know a bit about astrology to see that sort of matter, that physical, that structure, that's kind of like the past, and that's something that you know, I've in my past, this lifetime, and then probably previous lifetimes, that's there. And so that can come in. And then moving towards more of the spiritual and the energetic and the yeah, expanding beyond in the sort of Piscean space. And for me, you know, journeying through this liberation or this freedom of expression, what it's gifted me is the ability to really tune into what's wanting to come through me, not what I've like. Yes, I've learned a lot of skills and techniques along the way, so how I integrate those. And also, we were talking about before we started this, what's the unique vibration that I bring in the essence of who I am with everything I've experienced, everything I've journeyed through, uncovered, you know, and also just what I've come in with that allows me to offer something in an environment or a one-on-one space or a journey that I'm running. And embodiment or somatic dance has been such, in breath work and all these different modalities have really helped me to, I suppose, clear my channel and my energy enough to be able to let that happen a little bit more easily and to trust in that process of what's unfolding. So, and I think for a lot of people that go on the journey into the body from, and also from a body and energetic, it's, you know, when you get, like we talked about, you get into those subtle layers, those subtle realms, they do open up to gifts and they do open up to other ways of working with energy, or their witchiness, or their sort of medicine woman, medicine man, you know, these sort of aspects that might have also been part of that shame, or that what's been shut down in the feminine when we think about emotions and intuition and sexuality and sensuality and freedom of movement, and then we correlate that with all the different expressions of the feminine that have been denied and shut down and suppressed, and the gifts that they hold, and then the gifts that want to come through us to be expressed in the world at this time to support humanity. I don't see that as a surprise that a lot of people that are called to explore the journey of expression and freedom and embodiment are then also, they also bring through some of their own unique gifts that were there waiting for them under those layers, that may be part of the soul purpose that they're here to express and share. So expression is very much also our soul expression in the world, our soul mission, or, and that might be through work, or that might be through how we move through our lives, what we're creating in our homes, what we're creating in our families, how we're tending to the earth, or anything like that. Yes, my little spiel on that.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it, love it, love it, love it. And how you know you're pointed in that direction of your true north, I would say, is you feel it. It's a
Mm,
feeling. It's a
mm,
joy. It's a vitality. It's a knowing. You know, and that's why, to simplify, soul purpose is what brings you joy. I just love bringing it back to, you know, what lights you up, what brings you joy, what could you just, you know, what could you speak about or lose yourself into, because you're just, it just ignites something in you, a passion,
and
a joy, a love.
and often it feels well, maybe you've gone on a journey to reclaim that, but often it feels effortless as well once you're there, and that sometimes trips people up, doesn't it? Because it's like, was it not meant to be something harder than that, or you know?
Yeah, and a lot of that is the conditioning, because we've
Mm,
actually been very conditioned to believe that it needs to be hard,
yeah.
that it needs to take, you know, with there's all the, you know, depending on what the conditioning is, or even, yeah, and actually to devalue what comes easy to us. I know that
Mm,
was definitely my own path, and that's a
mm,
continuation
mm.
to, because a lot, yeah, like to really value, even value suffering, you know, and again, the religious background is like,
Yeah.
you know, if you weren't suffering, you weren't doing your penance or say, you know, whatever. So the idea that our joy and our ease and our, you know, all this is like our value. I mean, that's still like wows part of my psyche, my inner
Yeah.
child. She's like, oh my God,
I
really?
can live like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it can get more easeful and more joyful,
Mm,
and by being our true self. like by being more of who we truly are, which I guess is the sole purpose. But I think the challenge can be the resistance, because a lot of that is that, especially in those formative years, can be that conditioning, and the subconscious is, whatever that is, or
Mm,
what we picked up in our environments from caregivers, parents, even the educational system
mm,
around
mm.
all that. So that's the stuff that can bump up against it as we, as we do expand. I'm sure you've experienced that yourself.
Yeah, it's an ongoing like move towards and then clear the stuff and then move towards, right? Like I feel like that is, yeah, that's ongoing. And um, but like you said, the joy and what you feel and what you know, if you can more and more be guided by that, then that's a beautiful way to live.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So we've gone over time a little bit, so we'll start to wrap it up. If you could just start to share, yeah, what you've got going on, and yeah, what offerings you have. How can people connect with you?
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. And thank you for this amazing conversation. Like, I do feel like we could be here all day. So good. So many similarities. So at the moment, I'm currently running a soul-led woman online 4-month journey. So that's closed at the moment. That's currently in progress, but that may open again towards the end of the year. And at the moment, I've got a 4-week one-on-one journey available, which is, yeah, to really go into what wants to come through you as the channel. It's called Be the Channel. So that's a ceremonial and somatic journey for heart-led women who want to bring through more of what they're wanting to create and express in the world as the divine channel for that to, yeah, to come through. So that's happening, in-person events currently in Southland. So you can find those on my pages, and yeah, just stay connected on Instagram or on Facebook, and that's where you'll see anything that I've got coming up pop up there. So I guess I'll pass those links on to you, Sarah Menlove, or
Yeah.
Sarah.menlove on Instagram. Yeah.
So yeah, thank you
Mm.
for yeah, just thank you for who you be on this earth, and what you bring, and what you're an invitation for others as well, because you really I can feel that in you so strongly.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who's joined. Yeah, I hope this conversation has served and take from it what has landed and sparked something in you. Or, yeah, can't wait to hear. Mm, so fun.
So thank you everyone who joined the conversation. And yeah, write in the comments, join us on the Facebook page, let us know how you found it, what stood out, any insights, aha moments, or if it brought up a whole load of more questions, put them in the comments. Bye for now.